you look back in history, the motivations of the Nazis versus the motivations of, say, some populist movements in America were very different. But now they all seem to be the same thing. And now a lot of people would say it's the economy stupid. I've seen a few interviews just in the primaries there for the Republican Party, and they were interviewing people who had been voting in that. And so they're just voting for candidates to represent them for their party going into the elections. And we had Nikki Haley and Donald Trump as the main candidates there. So they interviewed women, middle-aged women who, you know, were not working class. You could see they had nice big cars. They were being interviewed outside. And they asked them about Trump's behavior towards women recently with the couple of trials that civil trials that he's faced. They just seem to say, well, you know, I can forsake that because he's promising more jobs. So it's like as if they're kind of suspending their morals for that quick fix. And it seems to be the same across, you know, Europe as well, where people are saying, yeah, I know she's a fascist, but she's promising me, my son, a job and, you know, cheaper education and, you know, a few bob in my pocket extra. There's nothing new about that. So how is it happening again, I wonder? Are people just kind of forgetting about that, or are they just being a bit greedy?
Great question, Ken. Also, with regard to the thought before that, basically, that you said, that's really something that's true on both sides of the Atlantic. You know, it's not just Trump. The fact that people will sort of suspend their, you know, ethics or their, you know, idea of morality as they cast their vote. There's so many what they call one-issue voters at the moment that people will say, this is what I care about. It could be jobs. It could be someone apparently standing in the way between my private life and the government, you know, whatever that means, intruding on my private life. And that's the idea that someone like Trump, for example, conveys to people a lot, which is absurd. Of course, he still does so. He still talks about those people in Washington after having spent 4 years in the White House. You know, that's absurd. You know, he's part of the elite that he sort of denounces all the time. But what people see and hear is that one factor. He stands between us and a government that will sort of take our freedom away, a government that will sort of put some healthcare mandatory on us, which we don't want, and so on. And that's or taxes that we'll have to pay for the church or something, which is unheard of in the United States, for example, but it's just a factor of life in Germany over here, for example. So people will focus and zoom in on one thing and basically willfully ignore the rest. And that's something where it gets really dangerous. That's something that we observe in Germany a lot too. So exactly like you said, people will say members of the AfD, the Alternative for Germany party, who are really on the rise right now, which is really worrying. Some members of them are just, they're downright Nazis. It means downright right-wing politics. And people say, yes, I know, but. And the but, you know, these three letters, they tend to grow very big in relation to what else is out there, what these people represent or stand for. That's the troubling part. So that's what I mean by populism. That's very different from the original idea of populism, you know, 100 years ago or something, when the progressive movement was big in the United States. And that's also out there. And there was a populist party, actually, back then, sort of growing out of the Farmers Alliance, you know, when the farmers were fighting across the board, and that was across party lines, fighting against a common enemy. And back then it was the banks, and the farmers couldn't afford their loans anymore, and they felt like they're trapped in debt. So that was very different, and they were called populists back then. And that's actually closer to the origin of the word, if you want, right? Because populism obviously refers to populace. So the populace of a country. So that original idea I like a lot, but Trump and comrades have perverted that idea.